The heavy cream envelope landed on my metal treatment tray with a sharp smack. The steady hum of the ultrasound machine masked the sound of my breath catching. I pressed my thumb deeper into the patient's shoulder muscle, feeling the exact knot of tension. The sharp scent of peppermint massage oil filled the small room. Richmond Children's Hospital Gala, Faye read aloud. Her voice carried no warmth. Black tie. 2 weeks. She paused. I heard her fingernail tap against the thick paper. Oh, and look who is running the show. I did not look up. I knew exactly what the gold-embossed letters said. Committee Chair. Courtney Perry. Formerly Courtney Langford. I saw it, I said. I kept my voice low. Even. Breathe in, I told my patient, and release. Faye stepped closer. Her sensible clinic shoes squeaked against the clean linoleum floor. You saw it when she sent it to the clinic mailing list. Everyone who donates over 500 gets one. I moved the ultrasound wand in slow circles. I loved my job. I loved knowing exactly where the damage lived in someone else's body. If only I could locate my own fractures that easily. And you were not going to mention it, Faye said. I am not going. Megan. Faye. I wiped a stray drop of gel from the wand. My business partner did not push immediately. She set the invitation next to the small framed photo on my desk. It was my wedding picture. Theo and me smiling outside the courthouse 14 months ago. No fuss, just us. Faye walked toward the door. You have a husband now. A clinic. A life Courtney Perry could not build in 10 lifetimes. And you are still letting her keep you out of a room. The door clicked shut. After my last patient left, I picked up the envelope. The paper felt heavy, expensive. I thought about the last time I mentioned Courtney to Theo. It was over a year ago, the night before he proposed. I told him the whole story. How my best friend stood as maid of honor at my engagement party while she had been sleeping with my fiancé for 2 months. When I told Theo that something in his face changed, I thought it was empathy at the time. I was not wrong, but looking at the way his jaw had locked, I realized later it was not the whole truth. He knew something else. I folded the invitation and shoved it into my desk drawer. I did not throw it away. The television in the living room murmured with the low voices of news anchors. Theo was watching CNN. I stood in our bedroom 2 nights later with the closet doors wide open. My fingers brushed past cotton shirts, linen pants, soft silk blouses. They stopped at a thick plastic garment bag shoved in the far back corner. I pulled the zipper down. The sharp smell of dry cleaning plastic and old lavender sachets hit the air. Inside hung the emerald dress. The store tag still dangled from the left sleeve. $340. I bought it 5 years ago. I remembered the exact afternoon. Courtney pulled it off the rack. Her blonde hair fell perfectly over her shoulders as she held the green fabric against my skin. Gavin will not be able to look at anyone else. I smiled at her back then. 3 months later, I found out Gavin had not looked at anyone else because he was too busy looking at her. I pulled the dress out. The silk felt cold against my skin. Footsteps padded against the hardwood floor. Theo stood in the bedroom doorway. Found something, old dress, I said, from before. Theo leaned against the doorframe. He pushed his thin metal glasses up the bridge of his nose. He had doctor hands. Long fingers always perfectly clean. Before me, before everything. Silence settled between us. He walked over and sat on the edge of the mattress. The mattress dipped under his weight. The gala. You are thinking about going. Faye thinks I should. What do you think? He asked. His voice remained deep and steady. He never raised his voice. He never told me what to do. I looked at the emerald fabric. I did not look at my husband. I think this dress has been in a bag for 5 years and it still fits. Theo watched me for a long moment. If you go, I go. He paused. He waited until I finally met his eyes. But Meg, I need you to go for the right reason. I knew what the right reason meant. Going to support the hospital was the right reason. Going because I wanted Courtney to see me walk in with a handsome, successful doctor on my arm was the wrong reason. I just did not know how to separate the two anymore. I draped the dress over the closet door. It hung there like a ghost. The color of something stolen. The color of something I wanted back. I picked up my phone from the nightstand. I dialed Faye. The Richmond Marriott Grand Ballroom hit me with a wall of sound on Saturday night. Soft jazz poured from a saxophone on the far stage. Hundreds of voices layered over each other in a steady cocktail chatter. High heels clicked sharply against the marble lobby floor. The air smelled of expensive, layered perfumes, roasted meats, and heavy red wine. I wore the emerald dress. I left my chestnut hair down. Theo walked beside me in a crisp black suit, his hand resting lightly on the small of my back. The warmth of his palm bled through the silk. Faye met us by the lobby bar. She held a gin and tonic. "You look like you are about to burn this place down," she said. "I look like I am about to throw up," I replied. Then I saw Gavin. I saw him before I saw Courtney. He stood near the end of the long mahogany bar. It was the same charming, easy smile that made me believe everything he ever said. His hair was thinning at the crown. He looked incredibly ordinary. Then he did it. Mid-sentence, his right hand lifted. His fingers pressed into the right side of his neck, right under the jawline. It was a quick, unconscious gesture, the kind of touch people use when checking a swollen lymph node. He dropped his hand a second later and kept laughing. My physical therapy training kicked in. I spent all day watching how people moved. I watched them guard their injuries. That touch was not random, but he was not my patient. I let the thought drift away. Sitting next to Theo, looking at Gavin, did not hurt the way I expected. But Theo followed my gaze, and his face changed. It lasted only a fraction of a second. His jaw turned to granite. His eyes narrowed behind his glasses. It was not jealousy. It was not anger. It looked like pure, cold recognition. He blinked. The expression vanished. "Let us find our table," Theo said. He grabbed my hand. His grip was suddenly tight. The clinking of silverware echoed through the massive ballroom. An auctioneer spoke into a microphone on the stage, his voice booming over the speakers. Then I heard the sharp, fast click of heels approaching our table. Oh my God. "Megan, is that you, Courtney?" She wore a striking red gown. Her blonde highlights caught the chandelier light perfectly. She wore a wide, bright smile, the kind of smile she only used when she knew people were watching. She walked straight toward me with her arms extended. She pulled me into a hug before I could stand up. Her perfume was suffocatingly sweet, too heavy. Her hands squeezed my shoulders tight. A performance, not an embrace. She pulled back. She kept her hands on my shoulders, looking me up and down. "Look at you," Courtney said. Her voice easily carried to the adjacent tables. "You look wow. I mean, I almost did not recognize you." "Courtney," I said. My voice stayed low. "It has been what? 5 years I kept meaning to reach out, but you know how life gets. Gavin and I just had Lily. She is 3 now. Can you believe it? And the house and this gala and—" She kept talking, filling every pocket of silence. But her eyes were darting around, scanning me, scanning the empty chair next to me while Theo was at the bar getting our drinks. Then she saw my left hand. Her breathless chatter stopped. Half a second passed. She recovered with terrifying speed. "Wait, is that a ring? Oh my God, Megan, you got married. Why did I not hear about this?" "It was a small ceremony," I said. I kept my face entirely blank. "Small, of course. That is so you." Courtney turned her body slightly toward the next table. 3 older women in pearls were blatantly listening. "Can you believe it? Little Megan Cole finally tied the knot." I was starting to worry. A few awkward chuckles floated from the neighboring table. I did not smile. Faye stood behind my chair. Her knuckles were white around her cocktail glass. "So where is the lucky guy?" Courtney asked. Her sugary tone grew louder. She wanted an audience. "Do not tell me he is hiding. You know I always told Gavin. I said Megan is going to find someone eventually. She just needs to stop being so." She paused. Picky. The old feeling washed over me. The feeling of shrinking, of being put back into the pathetic little box Courtney designed for me. The abandoned girl, the late bloomer who finally managed to catch someone. My legs felt heavy. I wanted to walk out the side doors. Faye bumped her hip against my elbow. Just a gentle nudge, enough to ground me. I took a slow breath. I did not raise my voice. I did not tremble. "He is not hiding," I said. "He is getting us drinks." I turned my head. Theo approached from the crowd. He held 2 flutes of champagne. He looked immaculate in his tailored suit. He stood taller than Gavin. He exuded a quiet, commanding calm that silenced the women at the next table. "Courtney," I said, "this is my husband, Dr. Theo Barrett." Courtney stared at him. Her brilliant smile froze. It did not disappear, but it locked into place like a glitching photograph. She extended a manicured hand. "Doctor! How wonderful!" Theo did not look at her hand. He looked right past her shoulder. He was looking at Gavin, who was now walking toward us from the bar. And my husband's face changed again. Courtney noticed it. She was too smart to miss it. She saw the doctor looking at her husband, and she felt the sudden freezing shift in the air. She did not know why yet, but her smile finally faltered. The soft chime of a crystal glass being tapped echoed through the ballroom, signaling the start of the dinner service. Theo placed his hand on the small of my back and guided me through the sea of white tablecloths. By some cruel coincidence, or perhaps by Courtney and her meticulous event planning, we were assigned to table 7. We were seated exactly across from Courtney and Gavin. 8 people sat at the round table, but the air only crackled around the 4 of us. Faye sat one table over her eyes, burning a hole into the back of my chair. Gavin approached my seat before the first course arrived. He looked entirely too good. The surface charm was thick and practiced. "Meg, seriously, you look amazing," he said. "I am glad you are doing well." His voice sounded so warm and genuine that my younger self would have believed every word. Then Gavin turned and extended his right hand to my husband. "Dr. Barrett, good to meet you." Theo reached out. He gripped Gavin by the hand. I watched my husband lock his jaw. His knuckles turned white as he held the shake a full second longer than normal. "Gavin," Theo said. He did not add another word. Gavin smiled back, completely unaware. He pulled his hand away and took his seat. He did not recognize the doctor. The lighting in the ballroom was dim. Theo wore a different style of glasses tonight, and 2 full years had passed since they stood together in a brightly lit clinic room in Northern Virginia. "So, Doc," Gavin said as he unfolded his linen napkin, "how did you 2 meet?" Theo adjusted his suit jacket and sat closely beside me. "Medical conference. Megan presented on post-surgical rehabilitation." Gavin let out a short, loud laugh. "Megan presenting at a conference, man, people change." I kept my hands folded perfectly in my lap. My voice was entirely flat. "People do." Across the centerpiece of white roses, Courtney watched us. I could feel her gaze scanning my face. She was looking for the old Megan. She wanted the girl who avoided eye contact, the girl who apologized for taking up space. She did not find her. Sitting there mere inches from the man who broke my life into pieces 5 years ago, I realized something completely unexpected. My chest did not tighten. My throat did not close. I felt absolutely no anger. I only saw a man I used to know, and the man sitting across from me seemed so much smaller than the ghost I had been carrying. Courtney shifted in her seat. The realization that I was not afraid of them was making her deeply uncomfortable. Dessert plates were cleared as the ballroom lights dimmed further. A single warm spotlight hit the main stage. Courtney stood behind the wooden podium. This was her element. She commanded the room with effortless grace. Her voice echoed through the tall speakers, hitting the perfect balance of humor and gratitude. She was raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Children's Hospital. For 15 minutes, she was the undisputed queen of Richmond society. Then, she gripped the sides of the podium and leaned closer to the microphone. She went completely off script. "And I want to thank my incredible husband Gavin for supporting this event," she said, "standing by me through everything." She looked directly down at table 7. Her eyes locked onto mine. "We have been through a lot to get here, have we not, babe?" The double meaning hung heavily over our empty coffee cups. She was reminding me, "I won. I have him. He chose me." But Courtney could not see what I saw from my seat. While she spoke into the microphone about him standing by her, Gavin had both hands hidden beneath the heavy tablecloth. He was staring down at his glowing phone screen. His thumbs moved quickly in the dark. Someone was texting him. As the applause swelled and Courtney turned her gaze back to the crowd, Gavin swiftly flipped the phone face down onto his thigh. I saw the hidden screen, and Theo saw it too. My husband did not say a word. He simply reached beneath the tablecloth and placed his warm, heavy hand over my knee. He squeezed gently. It was a silent message. I know more than you think." A warm rush of triumph flooded my chest. I sat in a beautiful dress, a brilliant and loyal husband beside me, my own successful business waiting for me on Monday morning. Courtney was throwing her best punches from a literal stage, and none of them were bruising me. I thought I had won. I thought I had finally crossed the finish line. I did not need anything else. The jazz band started their second set, sending low bass notes vibrating through the floorboards. I excused myself and walked down the long, carpeted hallway to the ladies' restroom. The heavy wooden door closed behind me, instantly cutting off the party noise. Inside, the silence was sharp. Water ran from the brass faucet. My high heels echoed sharply against the white ceramic tiles. The overhead vanity lights were brutal and bright. They hid absolutely nothing. I stood in front of the massive mirror. I washed my hands and looked at my reflection. The emerald silk, the gold wedding band. For the first time all evening, I let a real, unguarded smile touch my mouth. Then, the heavy wooden door creaked open. Courtney walked in. She was alone. No adoring donors. No microphone. Just 2 women, a long mirror, and blinding white light. Courtney walked over to the sink next to mine. She opened her small clutch, pulled out a tube of expensive lipstick, and began touching up her perfect mouth. 10 seconds of absolute suffocating silence stretched between us. The only sound was the running water. So she finally said, "A doctor." "Yes," I replied. "Must be nice." After everything, I turned off the faucet. I did not look at her. "It is." Courtney turned her head toward me. Her polite gala mask cracked. "You know what is funny, Megan? I spent 5 years waiting for you to show up somewhere looking miserable, divorced, alone, something. And instead you walk in here with a man like that and a dress that..." Her voice caught in her throat. She looked down at my waist, then back up to my face. Her eyes went wide. "Wait, is that the dress I reached for? A paper towel?" I said nothing. "Oh my God," Courtney whispered. "That is the dress. The one we picked together. For your engagement party." She let out a dry, hollow laugh. "You kept it. For 5 years. That is sad, Megan. That is really sad." I crumpled the paper towel and tossed it into the brass bin. I turned to face her fully. I kept my voice incredibly low. I did not keep it because I was sad. I kept it because it was mine. You took a lot of things from me, Courtney. This was not one of them. Courtney flinched. Her shoulders jerked back slightly, but she recovered in an instant. Her eyes narrowed into tiny, sharp slits. "I did not take anything," she snapped. The sweet southern drawl vanished completely. Gavin made a choice. Adults make choices. And honestly, if he chose me over you, maybe the problem was not me. I stared at her reflection in the glass. Beneath the heavy makeup, beneath the red gown and the diamond earrings, I saw something I never expected to see. Courtney was terrified. She was afraid because I was not broken. She had built her entire existence on being the woman Gavin chose over the pathetic girl he left behind. If I was fine, if I was happy and thriving, then the story she told herself for 5 years was a lie. And if her story was a lie, what was she actually holding on to? A dozen cruel responses sat on the tip of my tongue. I could have torn her apart. But I looked at her shaking hands and chose something else. "Enjoy your evening, Courtney," I said. I walked past her and pushed the heavy restroom door open. But the moment the door swung shut behind me, my hands began to tremble. I leaned against the hallway wallpaper and closed my eyes. I was not shaking from fear. I was shaking because a cold, ugly truth had just crashed into me. I came to this gala for her. I wore the emerald dress for her. I wanted her to see Theo. I wanted her to see my success. Every single choice I made tonight was a reaction to Courtney. Faye had been right from the beginning. I had walked into that ballroom for the entirely wrong reason. The band had switched to a lively swing tune by the time I made my way back into the massive ballroom. Laughter grew louder over the brass instruments. The night was getting late, and the wine was flowing freely. I walked back to table 7. Theo was engaged in a quiet conversation with another physician. I sat down next to him and felt my phone vibrate in my small evening bag. A text from Faye lit up the screen. "Are you okay? I saw Courtney follow you." I typed back the lie I always used. "I am fine." Courtney returned to the table a moment later. She had recovered perfectly, or at least she wanted us to think she had. She took the empty chair next to Gavin and placed her hand possessively high on his thigh. She leaned toward the older couple seated to her left, her posture relaxed and open. "Oh, did I tell you guys how Megan and I know each other?" Courtney asked. Her voice was loud and bright, completely innocent. We were best friends, like attached at the hip best friends. And then this is so funny, Gavin and I fell in love. And poor Megan was just... She waved her manicured hand in the air, caught in the middle. I froze in my chair. She was rewriting history right in front of me. In her version, she simply fell in love. She did not steal the man I was going to marry. "Babe, maybe we do not need to do this," Gavin muttered. He shifted uncomfortably under the bright chandelier light. What Courtney cut him off smoothly. "It is ancient history. Megan is fine. Look at her. She has got Dr. Dreamy over here." She laughed and turned her bright eyes toward Theo. "You must be so patient. Our Megan was always a little slow to warm up. Our Megan. As if I were a shared pet they used to take care of." An older woman across the table frowned. Not out of sympathy for me, but because Courtney was speaking far too intimately for a charity gala. Faye appeared out of nowhere. I felt the light weight of her hand on my shoulder. "You do not owe her anything," Faye whispered near my ear. Not even a reaction. But Courtney was not finished. "Honestly, I always felt a little guilty," she said, leaning forward to make sure the whole table was listening. "But then I think if the roles were reversed, Megan would have done the exact same thing." "Right, Meg." The conversation around us died. The table went completely silent. The jazz music faded into the background. Faye gripped the back of my chair tightly. I looked directly at Courtney. I did not raise my voice. I did not show an ounce of sadness or anger. I just gave her the absolute truth. "No," I said. I would not have. Those 5 words cut across the white tablecloth like a physical blade. Courtney lost her smile. For the first time all night, the polished veneer completely vanished from her face. Gavin abruptly pushed his chair back and stood up. "I need a drink," he announced to no one in particular. He walked swiftly away toward the bar. As he moved through the thick crowd, his right hand reached up and pressed nervously against his neck. I needed air. I slipped out of the ballroom and rode the elevator down to the parking garage. The heavy concrete walls radiated a damp, biting chill. The harsh fluorescent lights cast everything in a sickly gray glow. The smell of motor oil and wet cement filled my lungs as I walked fast, my high heels clicking sharply against the ground. My hands were shaking as I dug through my purse for my car keys. They jingled loudly in the empty space. Footsteps echoed behind me. I turned around. Gavin stood a few feet away. He was alone. He held an empty whiskey glass in his hand. "Meg, wait. Do not call me that," I said. "Megan. Please. I just wanted to say I am sorry. About in there." Courtney gets like that when she feels threatened. Threatened by what I asked. Gavin offered a sad, heavy smile. "By you. Buy this." He gestured toward me, taking in the emerald silk. "You look incredible, Megan. You always did. I was just too stupid to—" "Stop," I interrupted. He took a step closer. As the distance between us closed, a new scent hit me. Underneath the sharp smell of whiskey and his familiar cologne, there was something else. Perfume. It was a light, bright citrus scent. It was absolutely not the heavy, suffocating floral perfume Courtney was wearing upstairs. "I made the worst mistake of my life 5 years ago," Gavin said softly. "And every day since. You married her 3 months later, Gavin. You did not lose sleep. You do not know what it has been like." "You are right," I said, taking a step back. "I do not, and I do not want to." Gavin looked at me. For one fleeting second, his eyes looked genuinely desperate. Then he said the words that made the concrete floor drop out from beneath me. "Your husband, Barrett. I feel like I've met him before. Somewhere." I did not understand what he meant, but a cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. Gavin was digging. He was trying to place the face of the man standing next to me. "Good night, Gavin," I said. I turned around and walked to my car. I did not look back, but his words followed me into the driver's seat. I locked the doors and sat in the dark. I did not start the engine. The dashboard lights remained completely black. The silence in the car pressed heavily against my ears. I am sitting in a parking garage with my former fiancé, I thought. I am wearing the dress I bought for our engagement party, and he is telling me he made a mistake. 5 years ago, I would have cried. I would have believed him. I would have forgiven him. But sitting there under the faint glow of the fluorescent lights, I did not cry. I felt a sudden, fierce rush of anger. Not at him. At myself. I was angry because I came to this hotel. I allowed this night to happen. Out of 200 people in that ballroom, I was still the one seeking validation from the very people who broke me. I had built a beautiful clinic. I had married a wonderful man. I had a good life, but underneath it all, I was still living in reaction to Courtney. Wearing the old dress was a reaction. Showing up to the gala was a reaction. Dragging Theo here so she could see him was a reaction. I was not living for myself. I was living to prove a point to a woman who did not matter anymore. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. A message from Theo lit up the dark interior. "Where are you?" I picked it up and typed. "Parking garage. I need a minute." His reply came seconds later. "Take your time. I will be by the front entrance." I stared at the glowing screen. Theo did not ask if I was okay. He did not ask what happened or demand an explanation. He simply said he was there ready when I was. It was the exact thing Gavin had never given me. The space to have my own feelings without being judged for them. I wiped a single tear from the corner of my eye. I pushed the button to start the engine. The radio hummed to life, but I did not put the car in drive. I did not pull out of the garage to go home. I turned the engine back off. I needed to tell Theo the truth, and I needed to do it tonight right here before I lost my nerve. I opened the car door and walked back toward the elevator. The elevator doors slid open to the main lobby. The air was wonderfully cool and quiet, a sharp contrast to the damp concrete of the parking garage below and the pulsing music upstairs. Theo stood near a thick marble pillar. He had his hands in his pockets, gazing out the large glass windows into the dark Richmond night. He looked entirely calm. He was waiting for me. "Theo," I said. He turned and looked at me. "Hey, I need to tell you something," I told him. "Okay." He turned his body fully toward me, giving me his absolute attention. "I came here tonight for the wrong reason. I wanted her to see you, to see us. I wanted to win." I swallowed the tight knot in my throat. "And I am sorry. Because that is not fair to you." Theo was quiet for a long moment. "I know. You knew, Meg, I married a woman who will not buy new curtains without checking 3 different stores. You said yes to a black tie gala in 2 seconds. I knew." I almost laughed. I almost cried. It was a terrifying, beautiful thing to be seen so clearly by someone who did not want to change me. "And I came anyway," Theo continued gently, "because the wrong reason to walk into a room does not mean you have to leave it the same way." We walked back into the massive ballroom together. The jazz band was playing a slow, swaying melody. The overhead chandeliers had dimmed to a warm, amber glow. Theo pulled me onto the crowded dance floor. For the first time, all evening my eyes did not scan the room for Courtney. I looked at Theo. Only Theo. Over his shoulder I caught a glimpse of Faye sitting at the lobby bar. She smiled deeply into her gin and tonic. Courtney was sitting at our table, entirely alone. Gavin was nowhere to be seen. He was still out at the bar, probably typing on his hidden screen. Courtney watched us dance. She did not look at me with hatred anymore. She looked at me with the quiet, desperate realization of someone looking at a thing she would never possess. An hour later, the muffled bass of the band thumped softly through the thick ballroom walls. We stood in the quiet hallway near the coat check. The space was lined with plush carpet and softly glowing yellow wall sconces. A tall, floral arrangement of white lilies filled the air with a heavy, sweet scent. Theo was holding my coat when the heavy double doors behind us swung open. It was Courtney. She had been drinking. She was not stumbling, but the careful, calculated mask she wore all night had slipped completely. "You are leaving?" she asked. Her voice shook with a toxic mix of wine, anger, and fear. "Already, the party is just getting started." "It has been a long night, Courtney," I said. She stepped closer, physically blocking our path to the exit. "You know what I have been wanting to say this all night." Her eyes darted wildly between Theo and me. "You walk in here with your doctor husband and your recycled dress, and you think you have won something. I built this event. I raised $300,000 tonight. I have a daughter, a home, a life people envy. And you show up after 5 years with a man you have been married to for what, a year, and everyone is supposed to be impressed." She pointed a trembling, manicured finger at my chest. "And that dress. You wore that dress. You kept it. 5 years in a plastic bag? That is not moving on, Megan. That is a shrine." I took a deep, steadying breath. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "It is not a shrine, Courtney. It is proof that the things people steal do not stay stolen." She flinched as if I had struck her across the face. "You did not build a life people envy," I continued, dropping my voice even lower. "You built a life people look at. There is a difference, and I think you are starting to figure that out." "You do not know anything about my life," she spat. "I know my former fiancé followed me to a parking garage tonight to tell me he made a mistake," I said simply. "And I know you are standing out here yelling at me instead of asking where your husband is." Absolute silence crashed down on the hallway. Courtney opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Then she slowly turned her head toward Theo. The question that had been eating at her all night finally spilled over. "Why do you keep looking at my husband like that?" Theo did not answer immediately. But his face in the second after she asked the question told her everything she needed to know. It was not hatred. It was not disgust. It was profound, heavy pity. Courtney was smart enough to read it. She took a step back, her breath hitching in her chest. "What do you know?" she demanded. Theo chose his words with absolute clinical precision. "I cannot answer that." He did not say he knew nothing. He did not say he would not tell her. He said he could not. The word carried the heavy, immovable weight of a professional medical boundary. Courtney understood. She did not know the exact details, but she understood that this doctor held a terrible secret about the man she married, and it was devastating enough to force his silence. Courtney turned on her heel and practically ran back toward the ballroom doors. She was hunting for Gavin. I did not follow her. I stood in the quiet hallway, clutching my dark winter coat. "We should go," I whispered. "We should," Theo agreed. But as we walked past the slightly open ballroom doors, I looked inside. Courtney was standing squarely in front of Gavin in the dead center of the room. 200 wealthy guests surrounded them. The band had stopped playing. "Where were you?" Courtney screamed, her voice cutting brutally through the suffocating silence of the room. "When I was on stage, where were you when Megan went out? Where were you?" Gavin reached up and frantically rubbed the right side of his neck. "I was at the bar." "Babe, calm down." "Then why do you smell like someone else?" Courtney shrieked, tears ruining her perfect makeup. "Why do you always smell like someone else?" The entire Richmond upper crust watched as their perfect gala chairwoman completely lost control. Hospital board members and wealthy donors stared in absolute shock. Gavin looked panicked. "We are going home," he hissed, grabbing her wrist. "Why does Dr. Barrett look at you like he knows something?" Courtney demanded, ripping her arm away. "What does he know, Gavin?" Gavin froze. His eyes frantically swept the massive room until they found the open doorway. They found Theo. At first, Gavin just stared. Then Theo reached up with his index finger and gently pushed his thin metal glasses up the bridge of his nose. That tiny, precise gesture was the trigger. I watched the blood completely drain from the face of my former fiancé. The crowded ballroom seemed to vanish for him. He was suddenly back in a brightly lit examination room in Northern Virginia 2 years ago, listening to a doctor holding a clipboard say that he needed to inform his partner about his diagnosis. "We are leaving right now," Gavin commanded, his voice trembling. "Why do you keep touching your neck?" she screamed. The room was paralyzed. I stood in the doorway and watched the woman who stole my future realize that her prize had never truly belonged to her. I did not feel victorious. I just remembered that exact hollow agony of realizing the person you trusted most was a stranger. I pulled gently on my husband's arm. We walked away without looking back. Faye was waiting near the valet stand holding her coat. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "No," I said, "but I will be." The next morning, bright Sunday sunlight spilled through our bedroom curtains. I woke up slowly. Theo was still asleep beside me, his breathing deep and even. Outside the window, birds chirped in the large oak trees. The soft beep of the coffee maker sounded from the kitchen downstairs. The cool cotton sheets brushed against my legs as I slipped out of bed. I walked downstairs and poured a mug of dark roast coffee. I opened the hallway closet. The emerald dress hung there exactly where I had placed it the night before. I looked at the dark green silk. It was beautiful. But it was no longer a monument to something I had lost. It was just a piece of clothing. I reached up and snapped the plastic tag off the sleeve. After 5 years, I threw the price tag into the kitchen trash can. I took the dress off the hanger, folded it neatly, and placed it into a cardboard donation box by the front door. I did not hate it anymore. I just did not need it. "Is that coffee I smell?" Theo called out, walking down the wooden stairs. "It is always coffee," I replied. He walked into the kitchen and glanced at the donation box. "The dress, I am done with it." Theo looked at me. He understood completely. He did not ask any more questions. He poured himself a cup. "What do you want to do today?" he asked. "Nothing," I said, leaning against the warm counter. "Everything I do not know. Perfect. I took a sip of my coffee and looked out the kitchen window. The morning sun was warming the roofs of the neighboring houses. I did not know what would happen to Courtney. I did not know what secrets her husband's phone would reveal to her. And for the first time in half a decade, I realized none of it was my business. My business was right here, in this kitchen, with a man who never demanded I perform for him. Tomorrow I would open my clinic. I would go back to the work I loved. I would live the ordinary, quiet life I had chosen finally and completely free. 6 months passed. The crisp autumn air swept through the streets of Richmond, turning the thick oak leaves a brilliant, burning orange. I stood in treatment room 2 at the clinic, pressing my thumbs into the rigid shoulder muscles of a new patient named Claire. Claire was in her late 30s. Her jaw was locked tight. The sharp scent of eucalyptus oil filled the small space, but she was barely breathing. "I have to go to the wedding," Claire whispered. Her voice was tight with unshed tears. "My sister is marrying the man I loved for 4 years. If I do not show up looking absolutely perfect, they will think I am still broken over it. I have to show them I won." I stopped my ultrasound wand. I looked at the rigid tension vibrating through her entire body. I remembered the heavy plastic garment bag in the back of my own closet. I remembered the suffocating weight of an emerald silk dress. "Claire," I said softly. I pulled up a rolling stool and sat beside her. "You do not have to prove you are whole to the people who broke you." She turned her head to look at me. Her eyes were red and exhausted. "But if I do not, how will they know?" "They will not," I told her. "And that is the beautiful secret. You do not heal by making sure your audience is watching. You heal by walking off their stage completely." I handed her a warm towel. "I went to a gala earlier this year wearing the exact armor you are trying to put on right now," I explained. "I wanted the woman who betrayed me to see my beautiful husband and my successful life. I wanted to see her face fall. But the moment I stood in that crowded ballroom, I realized the heaviest thing I was carrying was not my past. It was my desperate need for her to regret it. The day I let go of her reaction was the day I actually got my life back." Claire took a long, shaky breath. Her shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch. The rigid, defensive lines of her neck finally began to soften. I went back to massaging the tight knots in her muscles, feeling the exact moment the burden began to lift from her frame. The truth about betrayal is that it builds a dark house inside your mind, and it convinces you that you have to pay the rent forever. But the door is unlocked. You can just walk out. Courtney and Gavin were still navigating the loud public wreckage of their own making across town, but their storm no longer reached my shores. Theo and I had built a home out of quiet, steadfast trust. It was the kind of love that did not need a spotlight or an audience to prove it was real. We all have an emerald dress hanging in the back of our closets. We all have that one piece of the past we are keeping, just in case we need to prove our worth to someone who never valued us in the first place. I took mine to a donation bin on a quiet Sunday morning, and I never looked back. I want you to think about the heavy things you are still carrying for someone else. What is the one piece of your past you are finally ready to take off the hanger and leave behind today? You probably have an emerald dress of your own. It might not be a piece of silk hanging in the dark corner of your closet. It might be a conversation you rehearse in the shower, a bitter text message you saved on your phone, or an image of absolute perfection you are desperately trying to project to someone who broke your heart. You hold on to it because you think that one day you will get the chance to stand in front of them and prove that you survived. But carrying that heavy expectation is just another way of letting them control your life. We are often taught that the best revenge is living well, but we constantly misunderstand what that actually means. Living well does not mean putting on a brilliant show for your betrayers. When you walk into a crowded room hoping the people who hurt you will see your shiny new life, you are still giving them the ultimate power to grade your worth. You are still standing on their stage waiting for their applause. True healing does not sound like a gasp of shock from an old enemy. True healing sounds like absolute silence. It is the profound, quiet realization that you no longer need them to witness your joy for your joy to be completely real. You do not have to become the architect of their destruction. The people who build their relationships on deception, stolen moments, and hollow public images are already constructing their own fragile glass houses. You never need to throw the stone. Gravity and time will always do the heavy work for you. The lies they tell themselves will eventually crack under the crushing weight of the truth, just like they did in that crowded ballroom. Your only job is to step far away from the falling glass. When you finally stop pouring your precious energy into proving them wrong, you get to keep all that beautiful energy for yourself. You get to build a life with people who do not require you to wear heavy armor or perform for a demanding audience. You get to wake up on a Sunday morning, pour a hot cup of dark roast coffee, and feel entirely at peace in a quiet kitchen. That ordinary, boring peace is the ultimate victory. It is the exact moment you finally take off the heavy garment of your past, toss it into a donation bin, and walk out into the morning sun with absolutely nothing holding you back. Letting go of that painful history is a terrifying step, but you do not have to take it alone. We all carry the bitter weight of old betrayals until we finally choose to put them down. I want you to take a deep breath and think about the heavy burden you are still carrying for someone else. What is the metaphorical emerald dress hanging in your own closet, and what is stopping you from finally throwing away the tag today? Tell me about the moment you realized you no longer needed an audience to prove your worth, and share your story in the comments below so we can all help each other walk away from the past.